I just wanted to talk about my favorite part of this process, which is really working with some of the tinier scraps, especially like the indigo, where I don't really want to waste anything. And I really do enjoy piecing these by hand. And what you really are doing most of the time is just, finding a straight edge, matching up some different scraps. It's kind of like doing a little puzzle. And it's a very nice, quiet activity because it's portable. It can be done anywhere. And you can see I would probably just clip this a little bit straighter so that I could maybe use this piece here and add it on. The one thing I do want to talk about, though, is when I'm hand piecing one by one like this, I take an extra step, and this is a very important step to me, and you may not want to take the time to do it. But what I do is I actually baste each seam down, and what the result of that is that it flattens out all the pucker and really makes the collage of pieces into a single fabric. Now I know some of you have already been exposed to my invisible baste, but I thought that I would just show it one more time in this context. It is one of my favorite stitches. I've already pieced these two together in order to make them long enough to fit on this side. And I'm going to go through the hand piecing just once because this will apply to any pattern that you're doing. I basically use a single or double thread. I think I will use a double one here. It's a little bit stronger for the velvet and not the end. And when piecing the seam by hand, I usually take a back stitch first and then 2 running stitches and then a back stitch and 2 running stitches. The reason I do this is the back stitch is a very strong stitch, and if you're using very slippery fabrics you might want to use all back stitches. But I find that 1 back stitch and 2 running stitches is a little bit quicker and still quite strong. Now I know this is slower. You can go back and check how it's coming out as you're doing. I'm using a silk velvet here, so it's a little bit slippery. But really, I mean, when you talk about slowing down, this whole thing will probably take me, I don't know, maybe half a minute. And in the scheme of things, that's not really a long time. And what I like about hand sewing is you have much more control. You don't get that horrible, like, rushing feeling that you do with the machine, which seems to encourage you to want to do more than you really need to do in a short period of time. And you get to touch the fabrics and get a sense of them. And really, it works just as well. Now if you want to do all running stitches, you can sort of load them up on the needle like this. If you feel like you're making them small enough and it's going to be strong enough. I'm going to do that just to make this segment go a little quicker so I can show you the remaining stitch. Now when I get to the end, I never knot. I take a back stitch or maybe 2, go down to the bottom and cut. It's really not necessary to do anything else. Okay, so now what you've got is you've got your seams sewed. Now you don't need an iron. You want to flatten everything out initially and then turn it over and split this and just thumb press. Now if some fabrics may not behave, but I mean you can keep a little sponge and some water next to you if you want to dampen them, or you can even lick your fingers if you're a little more primitive. But basically you want to press that seam outward, Maybe playing with it a little bit will make it stay there. And then you'll come back with a needle and thread and do what I call an invisible baste. Now all this is, and you're going to do it on both sides of the seam, coming up from the bottom with a single thread and taking the tiniest stitch you can, either a regular stitch or back stitch, and then a long stitch on the back. Now this kind of basting does not have to come out, and I use it over and over again for a kind of glue to make the fabrics touch. And some people in my other classes may have already noticed that it really gives your cloth an incredibly different feel than the regular just, ironed and machine stitch. Now this is something you can't really do on a machine. Again, the stitch you're taking on the surface is not showing at all, especially if you've matched the thread, which you don't actually have to do either if you don't want. It may leave a little dot, but it's just sort of like a little dimple, and you'll get to love it after a while. So you see the long stitch on the back and nothing on the front. Now I've done this here, you can see, and you can just see how nice and flat it lays. And I will use this stitch over and over again in this class. So it's just one of my favorite things. Just gives the cloth a beautiful ancient feel and keeps your. You never have to worry about using it now because your seams are never going to shift.